Discover the amazing moment a black CEO's heart was transformed by a surprising food request. Marcus Johnson's mind raced as he sat in the bustling corporate cafeteria, its sharp, metallic tables echoing with the hum of conversation and the clattering of dishes, all too familiar, yet somehow foreign. As the 45-year-old CEO of one of New York City's leading tech companies, he wore his title like armor. But underneath that polished exterior lay anxiety bubbling just below the surface. Today, however, an unexpected moment found its way to him. Young Amani, an intern with an earnest glimmer in her eye, approached him cautiously and asked, "Can you share your family's gumbo recipe?" Marcus chuckled, feeling the lightness of the request clash with the weight of his responsibilities. "Sure thing," he said with a dismissive wave, already distracted by revenue reports tightening around his shoulders like chains. But as Amani walked away, her hopeful expression lingered in his mind, igniting a blaze of abandoned memories. The laughter, the warmth of family gatherings in New Orleans flooded back, pulling him into a vortex of nostalgia that felt both inviting and terrifying. With every passing day, Amani's simple inquiry sank deeper into Marcus's core. The world of corporate mergers suddenly felt stifling, cold even, as he recalled weekends spent in his grandmother's kitchen, the smells of celery and spice mingling with love and resilience. How had he come to ignore this part of himself? His facade of confidence began to waver, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. The hum of the cafeteria was drowned out by the clamor of his thoughts, how he had been a beacon of achievement while distancing himself from the essence of who he was. But soon after, the very culture he worked within came into question. Alarming reports surfaced about unfair hiring practices, what felt like a dagger plunged into his chest. It wasn't just numbers on a page, it was a moral quandary gnawing at him. Should he risk everything and strive for systemic change for underrepresented voices, threatening his comfortable position? Or maintain his silence, letting the privilege conducive to success persist? The choice was suffocating. As he prepared for a critical company meeting, his breath became uneven, mind racing with conflicting visions. Secure his place at the helm, or possibly ignite change amid uproarious pushback. Which path was true to his roots? Grandma's voice echoed in his mind, "Lift others as you rise." Was he ready to confront a world that had often turned away from men of his kind? A lump formed in his throat, and beads of sweat formed as he realized this wasn't just about sharing a recipe. It was legacy, love, a dangerous fragility hanging in the air. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the meeting approached, moments of hesitation clawed at him. Could his past, wrapped in the warmth of family traditions and the legacy of his grandmother, truly shape the corporate landscape around him? The thought of stepping into the room, exposing his heart along with his fears, felt like facing down a tidal wave. Would anyone within those sterile walls listen, or would he simply be labeled as another executive trying to sermonize? He stood before the mirror, staring into his own eyes. Could he blend the man behind the title with the man who arose from ancestral roots? The crushing uncertainty pressed down, intensifying with every possibility that wrestled within him. The loud corporate world beckoned, while a soft, soulful call from his past challenged him to defy it all. Would he answer that call, risking everything, or remain in the shadows of privilege that masked the very person he fought so hard to become? The weight of his decisions clawed at him, the echo of Amani's question hanging heavily in the air, an unbearable reminder of what was at stake. The meeting room buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to Marcus's tumultuous inner world. He walked in, his heart pounding against the polished chest of his tailored suit. The stark brightness of the fluorescent lights felt invasive, and each face turned toward him looked like a judgment waiting to happen. He settled into his chair, the weight of authority sitting unnervingly on his shoulders. "Thank you all," he began, the words tumbling out unexpectedly. The agenda stretched before him like an obstacle course. Finances, strategy, branding, topics that felt increasingly mundane against the backdrop of his awakening. As he looked at the charts and graphs projected on the screen, the names of initiatives and projected revenues felt like shackles rather than stepping stones. As his colleagues engaged in familiar critiques and praises of the company's performance, Marcus's mind drifted to Amani's gaze, the anticipation in her eyes, and the gumbo simmering in his mind, a concoction rich with culture, history, and resilience. Behind all the metrics and success stories lay something deeper begging to be acknowledged. A silent voice urged him to articulate the unspoken truths that lingered in the shadows of the conference room. Before we dive deeper into the numbers, I'd like to take a moment to address something important. The tremor in his voice caught the attention of his team, eyebrows arching in curiosity. He sensed their eyes honing in on him, their expressions shifting from professional to intrigued. "This company prides itself on innovation and forward thinking, yet recent findings shed light on an unsettling reality regarding our hiring practices," he blurted out, his pulse racing. He felt vulnerable, exposed, yet strangely invigorated. "We've established metrics that reflect our commitments, but beneath those numbers lies the lived experience of many talented individuals who remain unheard." Silence enveloped the room, tension rising like the heat from a pot on a stove. And for a brief moment, he regretted the words pouring out like water from a broken dam. But caution wasn't the way forward, he reminded himself. His grandmother's lessons echoed, "Lift others as you rise." Imagine if our decision-makers came from varied backgrounds, perspectives enriched by real experiences. What if our innovation reflected the very culture we claim to be a part of? A wave of indignation surfaced in him, propelling his speech forward, letting go of the careful scripts he had memorized. Each word became a liberation rather than a responsibility. As he navigated the discussions that followed, he witnessed the responses shift. Some colleagues nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. He could sense the pushback lurking, yet determined questioning began to blossom amidst the skepticism. One colleague, Rachel, finally interjected, "Are you suggesting we broaden our hiring to include candidates we might usually overlook?" "Yes," Marcus replied, the admittance a release of pent-up frustration. "It means creating spaces for those voices that add dimension to our company, voices that resonate with people beyond our current boardroom discussions." Suddenly, the meeting transformed. It no longer revolved solely around quarterly stats, but spun the focus towards humanity, a call for accountability. Conversations ignited, realizations formed, and the air crackled with possibility. As the discussions deepened, a sense of empowerment surged through him. Marcus felt a flicker of something greater than mere hope. It was a shared vision slowly taking form. Yet, in the whirlwind of progress, a familiar dread hovered just above the surface. He knew that while this was a bold step, it was only the beginning. The specter of resistance loomed, and he would have to confront it as head-on as he had embraced this newfound purpose. As they wrapped up the meeting, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that, although he had initiated the conversation, the toughest battles lay ahead. He still had to navigate the challenging waters of corporate culture, continuously fighting to uphold his convictions. That question remained. How far was he willing to go for the change his heart yearned for? With the weight of those words lingering in his mind, he exited the room, unsteady in his stride, but emboldened in spirit. Outside the sterile walls, a hunger brewed, one ignited not just for justice, but for the gumbo that had first inspired him. And perhaps, he pondered, sharing that recipe could weave together not just flavors, but also people, connecting lives in a meaningful new way. As thoughts swirled in his mind, he realized one simple truth. The next step in this journey wouldn't merely be professional, it would be deeply personal. Determined to solidify this newfound mission, Marcus sought out Amani, ready to discuss a venture that would reflect his past, present, and the legacy he aspired to build. What would that venture entail? He felt drawn toward crafting a program that might not only elevate voices, but also incorporate the flavors of those stories. Yet, as he moved to find her, a shadow crossed his thoughts. The resistance he feared might not just come from his colleagues. Would he face backlash from his peers, even friends? Was he prepared for the sacrifices that might demand from him? The path ahead pulsated with uncertainty, yet it also whispered promises of transformation. He caught sight of Amani in the distance, her demeanor expressive and animated, and a sense of resolve surged within him. He was ready to create something profound, though the road ahead would undeniably be fraught with challenges. How then would he navigate the perilous shift from intention to action? The next chapter awaited him, holding wisdom yet to be uncovered. Marcus approached Amani, heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He had rehearsed this conversation 100 times, mentally spinning the intricate web of his vision. But she had a way of grounding those thoughts in reality. Amani, he called, the warmth in his voice attempting to mask the undercurrent of urgency. She turned, a smile illuminating her face. Her energy was infectious, and for a split second, the weight he carried lessened. "Hey, Marcus, you were great in there. I loved how you started that conversation about our hiring practices," she replied, her eyes sparkling with genuine enthusiasm. "Thanks, but we both know that was just the beginning. I have some ideas that I think could really make an impact." He glanced around, ensuring the buzz of the office hadn't drowned out what he wanted to share with her. They stepped into a quieter alcove, surrounded by the hum of the building, but shielded enough to nurture an intimate dialogue. "What are you thinking?" Amani leaned against the wall, arms crossed but her posture open, urging him to lay his cards on the table. "That gumbo we talked about, the recipe my grandmother always made, it's about so much more than just food. It's a story of culture, struggle, and togetherness. What if we structured a program around it? A mentorship initiative that places emphasis on shared experiences alongside professional development," he proposed, each word unspooling with an eagerness he couldn't quite contain. Amani's brow creased slightly, a sign she was processing the idea. She was analytical, always considering angles Marcus often missed. "Are you suggesting we use gumbo as a metaphor for our collective experiences in the workplace? Because that's definitely an interesting angle. But do you think it goes beyond just the stories? It's more than a metaphor. It's about action. It needs to be tangible. We could invite people from diverse backgrounds to share their narratives, their backgrounds, and we would build programs from those." Marcus felt the thrill of each possibility amplifying in his chest. We'd empower participants to infuse their unique perspectives into our corporate culture, creating a space where their contributions genuinely matter. The gumbo itself, a blend of flavors, forms the foundation for a corporate identity that stands for unity and diversity. She considered this for a moment, nodding slowly. "It's ambitious, but you know that not everyone will embrace that approach. Have you thought about how to address potential adversaries, the skeptics who will question the value of blending personal journeys with professional roles? Marcus's enthusiasm waned momentarily. He hadn't tackled the subject of resistance comprehensively. Right, I know there will be pushback. The status quo doesn't change easily, he admitted, unease creeping in again. What if this hope transformed into yet another dashed dream? Then we need to prepare for it, Amani replied, her voice steady and reassuring. We should create a plan that anticipates that skepticism. We can gather data, testimonials, anything to substantiate the value of bringing these narratives into our framework. It's not enough to present great ideas if we can't defend them. The momentum of the conversation began to shift. His initial excitement transmuted into a strategic mindset, one he recognized was essential for the impending battle ahead. He nodded, taking mental notes. Let's pilot this with a few key team members. Gauge their interest, gather initial feedback, and refine the approach, he suggested, a newfound determination gripping him. Yes! And we can also integrate cooking sessions where we literally cook the gumbo together. It'll be that blend of entertainment and engagement, fostering those relationships we want as part of the initiative. Amani laughed, the tension easing. Yes, bringing people together literally over the pot while simultaneously narrating stories. His mind spun with the synergy of the idea, but beneath it lay a chilling reminder. Success wouldn't come without turbulence. The conversation flowed, and plans began to take shape. They crafted an outline infused with cultural sessions, mentorship programs, analysis of past experiences, and tangible stories. Yet a sense of urgency lingered. What if the company rejected their proposal? He imagined presenting these ideas to the board. Would they dismiss it as mere idealism? How could he stand firm when mere acceptance felt precarious? As they solidified their intentions, Marcus suddenly recognized the fear looming within him, not just from outside the office walls, but from the depths inside where self-doubt resided. Would he be the leader he aspired to be in these uncertain waters? Marcus? Amani's voice interrupted, snapping him back to focus. You okay? Yeah, just mentally planning the next steps, he replied, masking the growing trepidation with determination. But as they wrapped up their brainstorming session, the weight of his next move pressed heavily on him. He understood the stakes. Shifting a corporate culture didn't merely require conviction, it demanded resilience and unwavering courage. Could he muster that amidst the inevitable opposition ahead? As they parted ways, his heart raced. Tomorrow's meeting with the board loomed closer, each tick of the clock echoing with misgivings. Would he have the courage to face them, to present not just numbers, but a vision that tied together not only identity, but lived experiences? Marcus was on the precipice of a potential transformation, but the journey had only just begun. How, amidst doubt and fear, could he champion not just change, but belief in a shared future? The morning sunlight spilled into the conference room as Marcus entered, a distinctive roil of emotions swirling within him. The large oak table appeared to stretch endlessly, filled with faces he recognized but felt distanced from, the board members, each holding a fierce skepticism that mirrored his own apprehensions. He took a deep breath, centering himself, although his pulse quickened at the thought of pleading his case. He wrestled internally with self-imposed expectations. Was he a mere participant in the corporate grind or the catalyst for change? His proposal had grown from a personal desire to share cultural stories into something more profound, a threading of experiences that could reshape the company's identity. But vulnerability thrummed just beneath the surface. What if they didn't see it his way? As the meeting commenced, he wove together statistics and narratives, giving life to his vision. The gumbo metaphor, emphasizing how diverse experiences could meld into something transformative, was met with piercing stares. The interplay of cultural narratives alongside employee growth was not a neat package that the board preferred.
Oppressive silence followed his phrases as he anticipated their responses with a mixture of eagerness and dread. When he finished, an unsettling quiet fell over the room, as if the air itself had thickened with uncertainty. Accountability was not just to his ideas, but to himself. Could he walk away from this unblemished when the reality of disappointment lurked like a shadow? "Thank you, Marcus, for your unique approach," came the measured voice of Mr. Willingham, the most senior board member known for his brusque demeanor. "But you must understand, blending personal anecdotes with corporate strategy may not be as palatable to all." The slight shift in Marcus's gut was unmistakable. "Are you suggesting you think this mixture is merely garnish and not foundational?" he countered, feeling an impulsive spark of defiance. "These stories are what bring life and authenticity to our culture. I can prove—" "Proving isn't the problem, but practicality is," Willingham interrupted. Marcus felt every eye turn toward him like heat-seeking missiles, a combination of judgment and curiosity igniting the air around him. "Then suggest a way I can demonstrate its worth. Ask the team to try. Come see how storytelling exists beyond the tales and resonates in the spirit of our work," Marcus proposed, conviction rising within him. His heart pounded fiercely against the walls of doubt, yet a flame of determination danced in his core. The back and forth continued, with Amani's supportive glances offering solace from across the room. She seemed to embody a reservoir of belief that he struggled to tap into himself. As intense discussions flared, Marcus felt a sudden realization surge through him. He was not just advocating for an initiative, he was advocating for himself. Each argument he faced framed a deeper question. Who did he believe he could be in this environment? Towards the end of the meeting, after what felt like an eternity of dialogue, the board agreed to a pilot program, albeit begrudgingly. A mixture of relief and anxiety washed over him. They were willing to test a piece of his vision, but would it withstand the struggles he anticipated ahead? When he left the conference room, the adrenaline began to fade, but a deeper understanding emerged. This was the first step towards not just institutional growth, but personal evolution. Facing the board had revealed hidden strengths he hadn't known he possessed. He could channel those skills into not only defending his vision, but molding it. Yet, as he stepped into the hallway, the gravity of potential failure loomed over him. What would happen if they saw only the challenges and not the possibilities blossoming from conflict? That evening, as he sank into his couch, his mind drifted toward a different kind of reckoning. The journey ahead wasn't only about convincing others, it was about solidifying his internal fortitude, preparing to confront the critics, both within and outside. Marcus glanced at his phone, the screen flashing reminders of the upcoming feedback session with the initial team participants. With a steely glint in his eye, he clutched it, ready to remind himself of the very gumbo origins that inspired his passion. He pressed into the unknown, praying for that strength, while questioning if he indeed possessed the resilience to fuel this initiative forward. Tomorrow would mark another critical junction in his evolution. Would he transform fear into fire, allowing it to consume obstacles that stood in his way? He held on tightly to the vision ignited through gumbo, questioning, could this recipe deliver both personal and professional redemption? The next morning began with a haunting anticipation clinging to Marcus like a second skin. The sun hadn't fully risen, but he found solace in the quietude of his kitchen as he brewed coffee into a steaming mug that filled the air with rich aroma, a contrast to the anxiety swirling within him. Today, he would meet with the team that had expressed interest in his storytelling initiative. They would offer feedback on the pilot program, a test that could make or break his inspiration. He rehearsed potential scenarios in his mind, parsing through imagined praises and criticisms.
Each possibility slid through his thoughts, leaving indelible marks of doubt. What if they found his approach trivial? What if they reduced his personal narrative to mere soft skills that would never resonate with the hard metrics of business? Shaking off the reverie, he dressed sharp, pulling on a tailored blazer that swathed him in confidence. He needed to embody both professionalism and authenticity. As he navigated his commute, his mind lingered on the previous day's meeting. He'd fiercely defended not just an initiative, but an ideology that had roots deep in who he was. That realization, familiar yet jarring, reminded him how entwined his professional identity was with his personal journey. The office buzzed with a nervous energy, teammates mingling around the conference room. Amani's reassuring smile greeted him when he entered. "You ready for this?" she asked, her voice laced with genuine concern. As the meeting commenced, he scanned the room, some familiar faces, others appearing skeptical, hovering somewhere between that place of curiosity and critique. Each person held power over the fate of his vision, elevating the stakes further than he had anticipated. It was a litmus test for not just his idea, but for his resolve to see it through. "Today's session is about collaboration and feedback," he began, his voice steady as he set the tone. "I want us to explore how these stories can reshape our connections and even drive our performance. Let's uncover the potential." As thoughts crystallized into discussion, diverse opinions began to flow. Some vocalized excitement about sharing their own narratives, while others hesitated, expressing concerns on how they might be perceived. Each hesitation tightened the knot of anxiety in Marcus's stomach. Suddenly, a voice cut through the mix. Kevin, a staunch pragmatist known for his analytical approach, chimed in, "But what evidence do we have that storytelling can lead to tangible outcomes? We work in an environment steeped in performance metrics. I don't think narratives translate into growth." Marcus felt a surge of frustration, but rather than responding impulsively, he took a breath. This was the moment to pivot.
Let me ask you, Kevin, when was the last time you connected deeply with a colleague? Wasn't there a story behind that? The room grew quiet. Marcus noticed the subtle shifts on faces around him, intrigued. As Kevin pondered, he sensed something shift within him. The act of selecting his words carefully, holding space for dialogue, transformed his initial anxiety into resolve. Here lay the opportunity, not just to defend his idea, but to frame it in a way that resonated deeply. "I challenge us to think about legacy," he continued, leaning forward. "Imagine a workplace where we actively shared experiences, building camaraderie and a sense of purpose. Those are the stories that create lasting bonds. That can lead to remarkable outcomes." The atmosphere in the room felt charged. A few nodded appreciatively, a flicker of understanding igniting among the disconnected skepticism. By the end of the meeting, Marcus left feeling buoyed. His passion had ignited a flicker of possibility. Yet, as he passed Kevin, who remained deep in thought, a sudden pang of uncertainty rippled through him. Would this initial enthusiasm be sustained? This didn't mark an end. It was merely an entry point. Later, settling into a quiet afternoon at the office, he realized he still faced the greatest hurdle. Not the board, nor Kevin's doubts, but his own lingering insecurities. Could he transform this momentum into something more enduring and impactful? As night fell, Marcus found his gaze lingering on his reflection in the window, challenging himself. He had come so far, yet what lay ahead seemed daunting still. If critiques loomed, so too did the chance for growth and evolution. The upcoming company-wide presentation on his initiative was looming, just days away. The pressure would be magnified, but it was a chance to rally the entire workforce around a shared vision. With fire ignited, he couldn't help but wonder, could this test truly define not only his professional legacy, but also his own personal redemption? Tomorrow would reveal the answer, but first he would need to gather his strength, one piece at a time. As dawn began to creep through the blinds, washing Marcus's small apartment in soft light, he sat hunched at his kitchen table, an untouched cup of coffee cooling beside him. The weight of his looming presentation sat heavily on his shoulders, threatening to suffocate the bit of enthusiasm he had managed to summon the night before. He should have been reviewing his notes for the final time, but found himself lost in a web of self-doubt. This was not just another presentation. It felt like a relentless spotlight on his very essence. He stood abruptly, frustration bubbling over, as he paced the room. With every step, his mind raced, pulling at threads of his past, moments of doubt, fears of failure, the sting of critical glances in boardrooms.
Each recollection illuminated a central truth. This was not merely about sharing narratives, it was about his need for validation, a longing to be seen, understood, and valued for his contributions beyond quantifiable measures. Determined to channel this energy, he flipped his perspective. If storytelling mattered, then it was essential for him to connect with his audience personally. He recalled a recent conversation with Amani, who, in a moment of vulnerability, had shared how food often brought her family together. Her words sparked an idea, a tangible connection that could be woven seamlessly into his presentation. With renewed vigor, he decided to turn the narrative around the looming meeting into a genuine experience. What if each participant was invited to share their own story while enjoying a small taste of that shared connection through food? It could embody the principle that narratives feed not just the mind, but the very soul of the workplace. The idea felt revolutionary, diverting the focus from the mere analytical to the deeply human. As he dove deeper into this line of thought, he began to construct his presentation, integrating his vision with sensory elements, a holistic experience that transcended numbers and performance metrics. He meticulously planned not just what he would say, but how he would say it. He envisioned a setup filled with the scent of fresh pastries, curating an atmosphere where stories could unfold naturally, inviting participation rather than eliciting skepticism. In the days leading up to the presentation, he fought through a cocktail of excitement and anxiety. The once daunting walls of the conference room began to feel more like a canvas where he could paint connections between colleagues. Each late night spent refining the idea drew a clearer picture of who he was becoming, a professional willing to embrace vulnerability on a public stage. However, just as his confidence swelled, insecurities clawed back into his thoughts. What if the executive team dismissed his approach? What if the allure of food wasn't enough to shy away performance-focused critics like Kevin? The fear of falling short gripped him, but rather than retreating into silence, he transformed fear into fuel. He would confront any challenges head-on and give voice to his authentic self. As he stood in front of the mirror one last time, reviewing his final statements, he caught a glimpse of the person he had been becoming. This was not just about proving a concept, it was a moment to embrace the fullness of his journey, one that stemmed from personal truth. Revisiting Amani's insights, he resolved to not just speak, but to invite others into their own vulnerability. When he finally entered the conference room, the aroma of fresh pastries surrounding the space was a bold reminder of the path he had crafted. Colleagues were already mingling in anticipation, curiosity etched on their faces. His heart raced. This was it. The moment to share not just an initiative, but an experience. Without hesitation, he began to smile, ready to embrace whatever the outcome might be. But as he moved forward, he sensed Kevin's confrontational stance lurking in the shadows. The assurance Marcus had gathered felt tenuous, veering toward unsettling doubt. Would this journey through vulnerability be enough to silence the critical voices that loomed nearby? This was the beginning of reckoning, and the air was thick with both opportunity and the uncertainty of judgment. Would he truly be able to cross the bridge between personal connection and professional evaluation, or would the ghosts of doubt prevent him from rewriting his legacy? Only time would tell as the presentation unfolded. As Marcus looked into the eyes of his colleagues, the cacophony of chatter faded, leaving only a palpable tension that hummed just beneath the surface. It felt foreign and charged, mirroring the swell of apprehension in his chest. He cleared his throat, a signal that shattered the bubble of anticipation, and began to weave his narrative. Slowly at first, he spoke about the power of stories, emphasizing their role in fostering connection and understanding in the workplace. But as he progressed, he felt half-formed thoughts and uncertainties echoing in his mind, whispering reminders of the critics waiting to pounce. Kevin sat front and center, arms crossed, wearing a smirk that hinted at skepticism. Perhaps any moment could shift from enthusiastic support to biting criticism. How could he harness the trust of the room while surmounting the weight of hidden disdain? He recalled Amani's vulnerability, the way her eyes sparkled as she shared anecdotes of her family gathered around meals. Inspiration surged within him as he pledged to share not just facts, but a piece of himself. He paused, allowing silence to fill the air, and then took a deep breath. Let's turn our focus to what binds us all, beyond charts and spreadsheets. I invite each of you to share a brief personal story from your workplace experiences as we enjoy these pastries together. What does a shared meal mean to you? Gasps and glances bounced around the room. Would his unconventional approach provoke disdain or spark interest? He locked eyes with a few participants who appeared intrigued, resonating with his invitation to merge stories with sustenance. It felt like a leap, careening toward an unknown cliff, but he steadied himself, realizing the power was in this shared exchange. With each new story shared, the atmosphere began to shift. People laughed, smiled, and relived memories that bathed the room in warmth. The pastries were met with appreciation, not merely for their taste, but a vessel for deeper connection. He could see the walls lowering, however incrementally. Marcus reveled in this moment of transformation. But amid the glimmers of connection, Kevin's sharp demeanor remained. He leaned forward, positioning himself to interrupt the flow. The unspoken tension grew thicker as Marcus prepared for what he instinctively knew would come next. Do we really base our projections on childhood stories and sentimental anecdotes? Kevin's voice sliced through the air, heavy with contempt. Narratives are nice, but we're here to discuss performance metrics. That's the real story. Marcus felt a familiar wave of insecurity crash over him. Was this all he would achieve? Was vulnerability, once protective, on the brink of crumbling under harsh scrutiny? His instinct was to retreat, to shield his ambitions and aspirations from further judgment. No, he wouldn't. He had positioned vulnerability as his ally, and it was time to confront Kevin's cynicism with steadiness. Kevin, stories are data too, emotional data, he replied, his voice steady, almost surprised at its timbre. They shape our culture, drive our motivation, and inspire real change. Yes, numbers tell a part of the tale, but without the human experience, they become hollow. The murmurs of support rippled through the room like a small explosion, reshaping its energy. Eyes shifted to Kevin, and Marcus sensed the power dynamics beginning to shift. He continued, emboldened by the warmth that had emerged. If we want to create a workplace that excites and retains talent, we must embrace both numbers and narratives. Together, they tell the complete story. Marcus's heart pounded, adrenaline propelling him forward. A pivotal moment had unfurled itself, one of confrontation intertwined with conviction. But would Kevin relent or double down on his criticism? As the atmosphere thickened with anticipation, Marcus's pulse quickened. The floor was his, the challenge lay ahead. Would he be able to solidify his newfound confidence, or would the ghosts of self-doubt return to haunt him once more? The moment hung in the air, electric with tension as Kevin processed Marcus's words. The usual bravado faded from his expression, replaced with something resembling confusion rather than outright defiance. For a fleeting moment, Marcus held his breath, unsure if he had crossed a threshold or merely pushed against a wall that would not yield. Kevin cleared his throat, a defensive measure that echoed through the silence. "So you're saying we should prioritize feelings over figures? That's a dangerous slope to ride on, Marcus. Emotion doesn't pay the bills." The laughter and camaraderie that had blossomed moments before began to falter, flickering like a candle in gusty winds. The weight of the room settled heavily on Marcus's shoulders, yet within him a flicker of determination ignited. He had opened a door, and just beyond lay a landscape laden with potential, if only he could navigate it without succumbing to fear. "Emotions," he began, his voice calm but firm, "are intertwined with our performance. When we feel valued, we're more engaged. And when we're engaged, our productivity mirrors that investment. You understand that, don't you?" Suddenly, the floor felt less like a stage and more like a platform for a deeper discourse. The room stirred as colleagues processed his logic. Marcus could see the gears turning. A few faces lit with understanding, nodding in agreement. Little by little, he was drawing them back into the warmth that had initially filled the air. Kevin's jaw clenched. "We don't lead with soft skills. This is corporate strategy we're discussing. We need to stay focused." "On the contrary," Marcus responded, leveraging that pulse of support seeping back into the fabric of the room. "Leadership today is about emotional intelligence. If we want to stand out and build a resilient team, we have to blend these skills with hard data. Otherwise, we risk isolating ourselves in a world where connection is more valuable than ever." As he spoke, he remembered Amani's laughter while sharing her stories, a piece of her that he had borrowed to find his footing. It all felt intertwined now. The personal had merged with the professional, just as he had hoped. Consider the past few minutes. Those stories formed connections that weren't present before. That's the kind of culture we should cultivate, one that values the individual experiences that contribute to our shared success. An unexpected murmur of agreement rippled through the group again, this time lending support to his argument. Flashes of understanding sparked in eyes that he felt were his allies, embedding themselves against the tide of Kevin's skepticism. But Kevin wasn't done. With a steely resolve, he snapped back. "I think you're romanticizing workplace dynamics, Marcus. This isn't a therapy session, it's a board meeting. We need strategic plans, not heartwarming narratives." Marcus steeled himself against the onslaught of Kevin's words, transforming growing frustration into strategy. "This isn't about romance, Kevin. This is about recognition. Recognizing that we're not just cogs in a machine. Whether we realize it or not, those emotional connections shape outcomes. They can usher us into new markets or innovative ideas." He sensed the room's energy had shifted again, creating a tension that felt more collaborative and less combative. He had sparked an intellectual inquiry, layering the emotional with the analytical. As the meeting continued, Marcus remained tuned to the pulse of the discussion, aware of each shift and nod in the audience. This was his growth, asserting not merely his ideas, but validating his belief in the power of an empathetic approach. He no longer felt like a solitary figure pleading for understanding. He was an architect of connection. As the last story was shared and the meeting drew to a close, Marcus realized he had taken significant steps beyond the confines of his insecurity. Yet, glancing at Kevin, the lingering challenge simmered. Just before the meeting ended, Kevin leaned in, a hint of scrutiny returning to his face. "I'll consider your perspective, but you know that leading with empathy can be misinterpreted as weakness. Some might take advantage." Challenged again, Marcus knew it was time to respond, An opportunity that might unfurl more than just dialogue, but a strategy for his future, one that could lean into the very vulnerability he had wielded. What's stronger than empathy, Kevin? Understanding others and how to navigate resistance with conviction. If I didn't believe in that, I would have never stood my ground. But he also knew he was not done. This dialogue was merely the beginning. The real confrontation awaited him in the shadows of their competitive ethos, where more adversaries lurked, ready to contest his resolve. As the meeting concluded and he stepped out, he felt a strange blend of exhaustion and exhilaration. This was more than a conversation. It was a clarion call for both his personal and professional evolution. What awaited as he ventured deeper into this intricate dance of connection versus numbers was yet to unfold. Would his journey provoke further inquiry, or would fear return to grasp his ambitions tightly once again? Fresh from the meeting, Marcus walked down the glossy corridor with a sense of accomplishment tempered by lingering anxiety. The echoes of Kevin's skepticism followed him like shadows, whispering doubt into his thoughts. It had been a small battle won, but the war was far from over. As he approached his office, he found himself retracing his words, analyzing the reactions of his colleagues. They had nodded in agreement, he reminded himself, yet Kevin's dismissive attitude lingered like a stubborn fog. Was he truly making a difference, or merely fighting an uphill battle? A sense of urgency bubbled beneath his surface, propelling him forward. Settling into his chair, a glance at his email revealed messages filled with project deadlines and performance metrics. He could easily drown in those figures, but a different kind of urgency pulsed within him. He opened a fresh document, the blinking cursor inviting him to articulate his vision more precisely. This document could serve as both a manifesto of aspirations and a strategic plan, an intersection of heart and mind. While he typed, fragments of Amani's voice echoed in his mind, her insistence on authenticity and connection. It struck him that he was not only fighting against Kevin's principles, but also against the ingrained corporate culture that often undermines genuine dialogue. If he wanted to shift the narrative, he needed to weave in concrete strategies, not just emotional pleas. His fingers danced over the keyboard as he crafted a proposal that fused emotional intelligence with actionable insights. He laid out a framework for how building emotional connections could directly influence productivity and performance metrics. This wasn't simply a theory. It was actionable data backed by case studies. He didn't want to simply challenge the status quo. He aimed to transform it. But even as he poured his heart into the document, thoughts nagged at the edges. What if Kevin dismissed it? Or worse, how would it affect his peers if his efforts fell flat? Doubt entwined with determination, bending his focus like a taut wire about to snap. Would they see the value he was trying to communicate, or would his ideas be lost in the language of numbers? The hours slipped by in a fervor of creativity, each sentence sharpening his argument. He needed allies, mentors to bolster his vision. The prospect of face-to-face discourse ignited a flicker of hope. Perhaps he could enlist the support of colleagues who had shown interest in his ideas, who saw the value of emotional intelligence. Without collaboration, his aspirations would remain theoretical. He recalled the way they had nodded in unison during his meeting, allies in a shared journey toward a more empathetic work environment. Crafting an email inviting them to a brainstorming session, he focused on making it collaborative, emphasizing their collective impact. They could disrupt traditional paradigms together, fostering an environment where connection flourishes. But even as he clicked send, Marcus felt the tendrils of anxiety coil around him. Would they respond positively, or would Kevin's disapproval seep into their minds, tainting their collaborative spirit before it even began to bloom? The email had been sent, but the real test loomed on the horizon. As he leaned back in his chair, exhausted yet fervent, he recognized something shifting within. Adversity was forging new strength. He could transform doubt into purpose. On the precipice of action, curiosity nodded his resolve. Would this small step lead to larger revelations?
He had ignited a spark, but did he have the stamina to see the fire through? As thoughts of the upcoming brainstorming session filled him with both anticipation and anxiety, he knew one truth. Leadership would require not just strength, but resilience. And so, as the end of another day approached, Marcus stood at the threshold of his next challenge. With mounting anticipation, he pondered the interaction he would initiate. The moment was ripe for something transformative. Could he foster genuine support and reshape perceptions? The clock was ticking, and the time had come to face those latent doubts head-on. Marcus stood at the precipice of a new chapter in his life, a stark contrast to where he had begun just weeks before. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation as his colleagues gathered for the company-wide presentation he had meticulously crafted. Gone were the echoes of doubt that had once plagued him. Today he was armed with conviction and a sense of purpose. This time, he didn't just walk into the room prepared to defend a concept. He walked in, intending to inspire and engage, to bridge the worlds of personal storytelling and professional ambition, to blend the metaphorical gumbo of culture and experience into a corporate identity that could thrive. As he approached the front, he felt a surge of confidence swelling within him. Each face present was not merely a critic or a colleague. They were potential allies in the very movement he had envisioned. He prepared to share not just the metrics and expectations, but narratives that resonated. This was his moment to connect. "Thank you all for joining me today," he began, his voice steady, resonating with authenticity. He paused, letting the silence settle, reinforcing the importance of the moment. "We've been meticulously analyzing our performance, but I want us to take a step back, peel back the layers, and consider how we arrived here." He launched into an engaging dialogue, weaving together the stories of individual teammates, their struggles and triumphs. With each anecdote, he illustrated how emotional connections infused their work with purpose, aligning precisely with the technical frameworks he had meticulously outlined. As he shared a heartfelt story about Amani and her familial bond through food, he noticed skeptical expressions beginning to soften, replaced by curiosity and understanding. The comfort behind shared experiences was becoming palpable. He could see the walls crumbling, the hum of skepticism giving way to enthusiasm. When it came time to transition into metrics, he confidently connected the dots. Empirical data shows that workplaces valuing emotional intelligence see up to a 20% increase in productivity. Think about it. When we genuinely invest in our people, we elevate both our culture and performance. His resolve cut through the nervous ambience of the room, awakening interest and engagement. One by one, colleagues began to speak up, voicing their support and building on his ideas. Rachel joined in, adding her own experience from a recent project, highlighting how sharing narratives led to more innovative solutions. Another team member, Mark, offered insight into his personal journey and the trust forged through vulnerability. As the conversation unfolded, Kevin, who had been quiet, interjected with a newfound curiosity. If we integrate these narratives into our training programs, how do we ensure they translate into actionable results for our clients? Marcus smiled, sensing a shift. It starts with pilot projects, testing these initiatives in small teams. We can gather feedback on how emotional engagement impacts our daily operations and customer satisfaction. We'll measure both qualitative and quantitative outcomes, proving that this isn't just sentimental, but fundamentally strategic. The warmth in the room intensified as more voices chimed in with suggestions and enthusiasm blossomed. The dynamics were transforming from a typical boardroom debate into collaborative brainstorming, invigorated by the possibility of something new. As the meeting closed, Marcus stepped back, feeling an immense weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by a buoyant sense of achievement. The board had agreed to pilot his initiative in several teams, a tangible victory that future milestones would build upon. Still, the journey didn't stop there. Outside the confines of the boardroom, the reality of his transformation settled in. Marcus had emerged from a place of anxiety to a position of confidence. He had actively challenged both himself and others around him through vulnerability, courage, and leadership. As days turned into weeks, he remained steadfast on this trail of authentic connection and emotional intelligence within the workplace. The ripple effects began to manifest throughout the company. Team members took charge of their own narratives, finding their voices, while clients expressed appreciation for the deeper engagements they encountered. Marcus reflected on the deep satisfaction of this evolution. No longer merely a corporate leader, he had become a bearer of legacy, intertwining personal growth with professional goals. His success was the result of his willingness to embrace his roots and intertwine them with his ambitions. The gumbo was simmering, blending experiences, stories, and data into a recipe for enduring success. Finally, a resolution emerged, a future reminiscent of Grandma's kitchen, filled with the rich aromas of culture and compassion, evoking a space where everyone belonged. Marcus found profound fulfillment in this realization, now equipped to rise not just as an executive, but as a true leader. And he knew, beyond any doubt, that the fight to blend authenticity with professional excellence was only beginning. The future stretched before him, rich with an amalgamation of flavors, textures, and stories waiting to be shared. Now it's your turn to share in this journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.